Good morning, it's 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. in the morning, and we're starting the next lesson on the Cold War, which is about the Hungarian Uprising, which occurred in 1956. I'll give it about another minute to see if anyone joins, so that they don't miss anything. No one's joined yet. Let's give it a few more seconds and to see what happens. If anyone joins, then I'll start a lesson anyway. Just to introduce myself, my name is Brian Dickinson. I'm a history teacher down in West Sussex. I'm a mostly full-time history teacher and sociology teacher, and also a tutor. Got me in tutoring business as well. And I tutor for Satchel, or show my homework, as you might know. I'm not sure whether or not you can, during the lessons, interact with me or send me messages. I would like some feedback. If anyone can feedback, my email's on my PowerPoint, and also on the. I think you might be able to contact me via Satchel. It'd be really good. Just get feedback, saying, how's it going? Right. I'm now going to start a lesson, and I'm going to share with you the PowerPoint. So we're going to look at the Hungarian Uprising, which occurred in 1956. So a little bit about the Hungarian people first. For a proud nation of a rich history, going back many, many centuries, once a part of a large European empire before World War I, the Austrian-Hungary Empire. Mainly agricultural economy, relied on farming and agriculture for jobs and money, as most European countries were at the time, actually. Culturally, Hungary is different from the rest of Eastern Europe. The language is not similar to Polish, Czech, or Russian, so it is a different sort of language. And Hungary was on the German side during the World War II and helped with the invasion of the USSR, which kind of might explain some of the discontent with Russia afterwards. And it was a Catholic nation as well. So what made it? What was it that made Hungary so angry? So in Hungary in 1947, Stalin allowed elections, but the communists did not win. One communist member called Rákosi started to demand other parties should be banned, and he used the secret police to arrest his enemies. And by 1947, he had complete control. And other countries also were becoming quite large in other countries, European countries, Romania, Poland, etc. Had other communist governments as well. So he didn't feel like he should be left out. Rákosi, not particularly popular person. So what was it about this leader, Matthias Rákosi, that people didn't like? This is a picture of him here. He used terror and brutalities to keep control. Religious teachings in schools was attacked and removed from the education system. Rákosi's rivals, or people who spoke out against him, were put on trial and executed or sent to prison for life. There was rigged elections. Only about 20% of people actually voted for him. The standard of living was pretty low in Hungary at the time during his reign, and there were food shortages, etc. There was no freedom of speech at all. They controlled the media, and every aspect of it was controlled. Media, theatre, arts, music, all the rest of it were controlled from the centre. And this was and also they had a secret police as well, terrorise and torture people. So this is what's called a Stalinist type of control. You even hear about this sometimes today if some organisations are really controlled from the centre or from the top, that they are Stalinist. Right. So schools did not teach the Hungarian language, and street signs were in Russian. Sorry about that spelling mistake there. I was doing it last night. I didn't realise that. So they didn't use the Hungarian language, and street signs were in Russian. Workers were angry as they watched the goods they produced being sent to the USSR for unfair prices. So that's quite key. So they were making things, and things were being sent back to Russia and not being paid the full price for it. So people in Hungary weren't particularly pleased about that. They knew that was going on. The Hungarians had to pay for troops to be present on their streets, which they didn't really want. Unbelievable that they had to pay for these troops to be there, even though they didn't really want them there. All of this is building up resentment. The Hungarian economy was controlled from the Soviet Union through what's called Comecon. This prevented Hungary from trading with the West and receiving martial aid. If you remember last lesson, I talked about martial aid, which is the economic aid given to Europe to stop the spread of communism. Hungary, even though they didn't have a communist leader or didn't vote one in, because it was controlled from the Soviet Union, they were not allowed to receive it. As a result, Hungary was forced to trade with the USSR and did not always receive a fair price. Rákosi put forward a 5-year plan, and the Soviets were very keen on it, and Stalin were very keen on his 5-year plans, but it failed to bring progress. Living standards were very low, and Rákosi was not liked at all in Hungary. Okay, so it's worth bearing in mind that Rákosi, who was the leader of Hungary at the time, was not popular at all, very unpopular. But there's not a lot they can do. They can't really vote him out. He's controlled from someone, a different country, who are also very strict, so very different. Okay, and in 1956, especially, there were failed harvests and fuel shortages. So, you know, that coupled with the fact that you don't like the government and you control from another government across in another country, things aren't really looking too good for Hungary. And this is what a Hungarian student said: living standards were declining, yet a paper kept saying we had never had it so good. Why? Why these lies? Everybody knew that the state was spending money on armaments. Why could they not admit that we were worse off because of the war effort and the need to build new factories? I realised the system was wrong and stupid. So there was a lot of discontentment, okay, building up to 1956. Why? But one of the things you've got to kind of try and do as a historian is try and think, why did this happen then? What was it about 56 that made it different? Okay, why did they not do it later or even earlier? A lot of it's down to do the fact the harvest failed, so people felt worse off than usual, but there was a building resentment going on and on and on. So one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of timelines, always make sure that if you do something to do with history, build timelines, especially for the Cold War, but then you realize, oh, hang on a minute, yeah, this happened just before this, so this might have influenced it. So one of the things that influenced this was the death of Stalin. On the 5th of March 1953, Stalin dies. Okay, there he is on his death, literally being in laden state. One thing that you've got to remember about Stalin, there was what's called a cult of a personality. It arises when an individual uses the mass media, propaganda, and other methods to create an idealized, heroic, and at times worshipable image, often through unquestioning flattery and praise. So people around Stalin would not criticize him at all. Okay, you know, because they would be hauled off to the gulag, they might have been in prison, they might have been killed. There were trials of people who were supposed to be against him. Most of them were show trials. People were not really guilty of anything. When he gave a speech, people would always give a standing ovation, and people were frightened of being the first person to stop clapping. But sometimes the applause went on for absolutely ages. There's a film called The Death of Stalin, which is, I'm not sure what certificate, it might be an 18, certainly 15, a bit sweary at times, but it is quite funny in terms of how the cult of personality really does explain it well. I mean, when he died, for example, people were worried about actually announcing his death in case it was a trick. And was it really him? Did he really die? In case, because they got it wrong, they would have been probably executed. So had that around him, okay? So, and he was very ruthless. So, and here's just some of the newspaper headlines regarding him. And he was a dictator, there's no doubt about that. Lining state, that's what it writes. Okay, now who followed him? A man called Nikita Khrushchev. Okay, we'll hear about him a bit later on as well. Not just today, but later on in the course. Now, you've got to think about who he was, when did he come to power, 1953. He made what's called a secret speech, which wasn't very secret. He talked about de-Stalinization, in other words, getting rid of Stalin's way of working, and he disliked the cult of personality. And you've got to think about, oh, hang on a minute, he was making his speech, which is not very secret because it went all around the world, and it also, even though it was meant to be only for communist people, a lot of leaders in Eastern Europe also heard about it and read the speech. So, Death of Stalin is 1953. Okay, how might this affect Hungary? You think about what was it? So, if they're being ruled from Soviet Union and ruled especially by Stalin, and they couldn't question it, how might this affect them? Okay, so Khrushchev comes in, and new leader, and he actually says that Stalin was too harsh and will start a friendlier communism, type of communism with a human face, I think he called it. He'd even given Poland, which is nothing but his own country, more freedom to choose their leaders. Okay, he says the executions and imprisonments that Stalin did was wrong. So he's kind of saying, oh, I'm a nicer person. Let's have a bit of openness. Poland can choose their own leaders, and what Stalin did was wrong. Okay. Now, imagine this, people. If you're in school and you get a really, 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 really strict teacher where you can't breathe and talk in their lessons, and then you get another teacher come in who's not like that. What is it like? Oh, you start breathing, you start relaxing. You go, oh, right, yeah, we'll start chatting. Maybe sometimes you start take it a bit further. You certainly start doing the things in the lessons that you don't normally do, maybe, or you can't get away with. And this is exactly what happened with Hungary, coupled with the fact that they weren't particularly well off. And 1956 was a bad year for harvests and things like that. So you think about what could they do that they couldn't do before? Criticise and choose their governments. Okay, so so there was a bit of an uprising, a bit of people started to fight back a little bit. So why did this happen? Don't forget the Soviet control was very unpopular. Okay, Khrushchev's speech made denouncing Stalin. Rakoczy was an extremely unpopular leader. Okay, it's worth remembering that he was extremely unpopular, and falling living standards and an increased poverty. All those things are leading up to the fact that people go, oh, right, well, we need to do something about this, don't we? Okay, and also don't forget the hatred of this secret police, which Stalin had as well. So, who's this person? I don't know if you've ever come across him before. He was replaced, Rakoczy was replaced then by a man called Imre Nagy. I know it looks like the word Nagy, but it's actually pronounced Nagy. I actually used to teach a student with the same surname. So Imre Nagy. Now, so Nagy gave freedom of press, encouraged open discussions on political and economic reform, talked about holding free elections, and importantly, withdrawing from the Warsaw Pact. Okay, so this is like a NATO, this is like a military alliance. He talked about holding free elections and withdrawing from the Warsaw Pact. He also proposed reforms to the government to include non-communist parties. So he wanted to also have people in political parties that were not communist. He wanted to end the one-party state in Hungary, which they had in all other Eastern European countries. So one thing worth remembering that all of the parties, all of the Eastern European countries, as well as the Soviet Union, only had one political party, and that was the Communist Party. Whereas in this country we have 2 or 3 or 4 main ones, as well as smaller ones. In Hungary, they only had one. He wanted to end that. He's willing to allow non-communists to take part. He also authorised the immediate release of many political prisoners and started to make demands that the Soviet troops be removed from Hungary. He wanted them off the streets. Okay, Khrushchev obviously pops his head up. What is it I said? Oh yeah, we can have a chat, but now maybe you've gone a bit too far. I don't mind the talking, I don't mind the freedom, but I think this is going a little bit too far. As I said, I'm a big fan of timelines. Stalinist PM Rakoczy falls from power in July 1956. October, protests in Budapest against communist rule turn into riots. Okay. So they were sort of trying to be clamped down on. Khrushchev agrees that Naj can become prime minister in the 24th of October. 28th, Soviet troops begin to withdraw from Budapest. Government promised free elections and freedom of speech. So literally 4 days after Naj comes to power, Soviet troops start to withdraw. The 3rd of November, Naj announces Hungary is to leave the Warsaw Pact. So literally just a few days later, okay? A week later, he says, I'm going to leave the Warsaw Pact. And then the following day, Soviet troops then return. Oh no, hang on a minute, you can't do that. You can't leave the Warsaw Pact. And they start having street battles with Soviet troops, okay? Why do you think they did this? What was it about this? You think, hang on a minute, why would they go and do this? Why would they take the troops away and send them back in again? What was it about leaving the Warsaw Pact that the Khrushchev was so worried about? Well, obviously, he didn't want Hungary to leave. Was it weakened the Warsaw Pact? Having one country leave it militarily would weaken it. And also, one thing I think they were really, really concerned with was other European countries or East European countries doing the same. Saying, hang on a minute, why don't we do that as well? Why don't we actually leave as well? And they're worried about it starting a bit of a domino effect. So just some of the pictures of the toppling down of Stalin's statue there, some troops on the street, people with rifles, etc. Okay, now the Soviets send in the Red Army. Now, one thing that you might want to do, there are some YouTube clips or videos on this, which if you go to YouTube, I'm not going to play this because it'll take too long. I just want to quickly show you what it looks like. It's called The History File, the Cold War, Hungary, 1956. Okay, and it's not bad. It's a BBC one, I think it is. It's actually quite good. So it's worth actually having a look at that. Okay, so I'm going to show that again. So it's actually not bad. It's about 23 minutes long, and it's worth looking at. It's worth kind of having a look at that. There's also a series on YouTube, which was on the TV channel 4 many years ago, back in the 90s, called Cold War. Okay, look it up. They're all about an hour long, and each episode is about a different aspect. And there's one just on the Hungarian Uprising as well. A bit more detail, a bit longer. Kenneth Branagh as a commentator, or narrator, I should say, and it's really good. It's a really good series, and all of them are on a. Someone's got uploaded all of them, called Cold War. So, 1,000 troops, Soviet troops, were killed in the uprising. About 5,000 Hungarians were killed. 200,000 Hungarians fled the country, becoming political prisoners. Refugees, sorry, not prisoners, refugees. Some of them actually came here as well. I've met a few Hungarians actually since this, whose parents, grandparents fled in the 1950s. Some of them settled here. This person, it was Kadar. He was appointed leader under communist control after Naj. Okay, so the Soviets put Khrushchev put him in charge, and Naj and his associates were all tried, put on trial, and executed. So that's worth remembering, because later on we come up with another uprising, 12 years later, where the leaders of the uprising were not executed. So Naj was executed, okay, and all these leaders as well. So the USA did nothing. Why? So it's worth remembering that the revolt was put down, was crushed, people fled, lots of people were killed, lots of people left the country because of it. So why did the USA do nothing? So Eisenhower, I feel, with the Hungarian people, he actually quite famously said, and this is Dulles, this is American Secretary of State, to all those who suffered under communist slavery, let's just say, you can count on us. So a lot of people, a lot of rough Hungarians thought, hang on, Americans might come to our help, maybe. The people of Hungary expected support from the USA and Western Europe. They did expect it, didn't get it. Eisenhower was sympathetic to the Hungarians, and some NATO nations did take Hungarian refugees, but no military support was offered. So, as I said, Britain took some Hungarian refugees in as well. but no military help was ever offered. Containment was about stopping communism from spreading, not getting involved in already communist states. So where communism already existed, they left it. They said, okay, let's leave it there. Let's not actually try and take it out. And it was not about taking over communist countries. It was about just stopping them going anywhere else. So containment was about keeping them there, not stopping it. And stopping it spreading, but not actually going into communist countries already. A military attack on a Soviet satellite state could be trigger a nuclear war. So had they gone in, they would have been fighting Soviet troops. So America or Britain or France sent in troops to defend the Hungarian people. They would have been fighting Soviet troops on foreign soil. This could have been an act of war. The Soviets could have retaliated, could have then triggered a nuclear war. But don't forget, the Soviet Union had nuclear weapons by now. The UN convened a special inquiry into the events, but the Soviet Union and Hungary refused to participate. So no action was taken. So where the United Nations, which the Soviet Union was a member of, said, right, we're going to look into this and condemn it. The Soviet Union didn't take part. So it couldn't do anything, basically, the UN. And this is the case with the UN even today, to a large extent. There was also a crisis with the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal affected Britain quite badly. We partly owned it, and the person in Egypt nationalised it. And the Suez Canal is very, very crucial to shipping. So it cuts through Egypt, saves ships, I think, all the way around Africa, and they nationalised it, which means that ships couldn't go through it. And there was a bit of a military standoff, and we had to take it over, but the Americans helped out. So that was quite a big crisis for Britain, at least, anyway. Look into that a bit more. It doesn't come up really in the exams, but look it up and you'll see that. The impact. Khrushchev's position and the Soviet Empire was much more secure. Okay, so he kind of put down he crushed the uprising, made him much more stronger. It became clear that de-Stalinisation would only go as far as Khrushchev wanted it to. So even though they might have more say in things like that, they weren't going to actually be able to leave. The Warsaw Pact was now stronger. Members knew they must do as they were told. If they rebelled, they could face no support from the USA. So they were on their own, basically. They thought, well, the Americans aren't going to come and help, then we've got to fight the Soviets on our own. Khrushchev became more confident. It was clear the USA was unlikely to risk taking military action. The uprising reflected badly on the West. The USA was not prepared to back up their words of support. It also made the Soviets look really bad. The uprising in Khrushchev cracked down soured relations between the superpowers. So the rest of the West said, oh, hang on a minute, Soviet America not doing anything. But look at Khrushchev. Maybe he's not quite such a nice person as he claims to be. Is this communism with a human face really? Maybe behind the smile, he's not quite so nice. The Cold War did get a bit colder. Okay, so whereas you see peaks and troughs in the relationship between the superpowers, and it's all about the superpower relationships, don't forget, this whole course is about that. Is it getting better between them, or is it getting worse? And this is a case where the relationship between the East and West got worse. Now, one thing that you might want to have a look at, and I shall, if you get the video of this and you want to go through it, you can match up. This is what I do in lessons sometimes. Match up what they said and what they actually did together, and you might want to have a look at that and do that by yourself. It's a bit of a way of trying to remember what actually happened. Also, that's what we are also all about. It's my website down the bottom there. Is exam questions, okay? And this is a typical GCSE exam. Explain two consequences of the uprising, Hungarian Uprising for 1956, and it was 8 marks. So you get 4 marks per consequence. Now, consequences do not explain just what happened. What a lot of people do, and what a lot of common mistake is, if you were to talk about just the events of the Hungarian Uprising, you wouldn't get any marks. You have to talk about the consequences. What came out of it? what was the result of the uprising? And that's what you've got to explain. You only get 4 marks per each one. So it's not a lot. You haven't got to write masses for this one. You've only got to write probably, you know, a paragraph for each bit, for each consequence, okay? There's my website. My email address is on the first slide. If you want to email me, if you want to have a go at doing that and email me, I'll mark it. I'll send it back and say, right, yeah, this is quite a good exam question, and I'll give you some pointers about how to actually improve it. Right. I'll stop sharing. Right. Okay, no one's turned up, so this will be emailed out to people. By all means, if you want to have a look at I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I'd like the feedback if you can do. Give me some feedback about how it's gone, and etc. etc. Enjoy the rest of the day. It's gone over a little bit more now, 25 minutes, but enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope to see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.